Do you know someone who's vaccine injured? I reckon many of you will do. Some of you probably won't even give it a thought, really. It's just not something that's hit your radar. And yet there are so many in the UK. And we at UKMFA actually believe they're not being treated very well. And we thought it'd be a really good idea, especially given that this is being recorded on the 10th of January, that on the 14th of January the COVID inquiry continues. And that COVID inquiry has various modules, and Module 4 is going to be heard as of Monday. So I thought it'd be a really good idea to speak to two people together who have both experienced vaccine injury but from a slightly different perspective. One you've already seen before on this podcast is Alex Mitchell. He suffered greatly and he had blood clots and ended up losing a leg, and quite frankly is lucky in a sense to be alive. Lucky to be alive. The other is Kam Milla. Now Kam lost her husband as a result. Devastating for her and for her family. The stories actually coincide quite regularly, and so I'd really appreciate it if you could stick it out. It's quite a long podcast, but there's so much information in there. So much of their stories, as I say, coincide, and so things can't be really coincidence, can they? Well, let's find out. Let's talk to Kam Milla and Alex Mitchell.
Welcome to another broadcast by the UK Medical Freedom Alliance, the UK's most recognised and respected organisation advocating for every individual's right to informed consent, bodily autonomy and medical choice. We are the UK's voice of ethical medicine.
Right, so thank you so much. Alex, Kam, I'm more than honoured and grateful for the two of you to come on the UKMFA podcast today. It's something that I never believed we would get to this stage. You know, I think we're all full of hope all the time, which is really good. We need to be hopeful, but time drags on and on and on, and we hope that things are going to improve, and for some reason they don't. And what I wanted to examine today is in light of the fact that as of Monday, the Module 4 of the inquiry starts, the infamous inquiry that the government is running in London, and we are hoping, again, beyond hope, that information will be imparted that they will actually listen to, and the two of you and your so many friends and the colleagues that are involved in this now, which is, again, is not a situation that you'd ever want to have. I'm sure they've become great friends and colleagues, and you love them to bits, but honestly, you probably would never have wanted to meet them in the first place. But the circumstances have thrown you together. And I guess sometimes the universe moves in mysterious ways and brings lovely people together too. So the hearing starts. Now excuse me if I do quick look this way towards notes, because I don't want to forget any dates. But the module starts on Monday, but I think it really kicks off as of Tuesday, when people actually start giving some evidence. And you've got Kate Scott, I think, appearing on behalf of the Vaccine Injured and the Bereaved UK group, which is wonderful. And that's on Wednesday in the afternoon. That lovely Right Honourable Matt Hancock is going to get a chance to speak as of Thursday, so it'll be very interesting to see what that young man's got to say for himself. And just so that you know, UKMFA ourselves, so because obviously our remit is bodily autonomy, medical ethics and informed consent, we submitted our own statement, but they have actually declined to allow us to attend and actually give evidence in person. But we submitted our final witness statement, and also out of that grew the People's Vaccine Inquiry, which we ran separately because we knew that they were going to take what we thought was going to be the original date of Module 4 and then pushed it all the way to now. This should have been done months and months and months ago. As I said, we've not been invited to be present, but we have asked some specific questions, so just so that you're aware that first of all, we said, will our witness statement be shared with all of the Module 4 core participants? Will the UK MFA witness statement be published on the COVID inquiry website? And if so, when will it be published? And can we please have a link? And obviously we'll be making commentary during that module anyway, and we'll make a joint press release immediately after that, and there'll be a lot more from us in February after that module was concluded. Interestingly, they haven't answered that question or those questions yet, and the module starts on Monday, and yet we haven't had an answer to any of those questions. So that's where we are. This is, unfortunately, I think we kind of expect this, don't we? But this is where we are. So Kam, forgive me, I didn't know of your case previously. I've come across many cases, but for some reason your one escaped me, so I do apologise for that. It's interesting. I'm quite grateful for the information you sent me yesterday, and it's very interesting that what happened to your husband, and we'll go into some of that detail in a moment, was not dissimilar to you, Alex, in terms of the way that kind of worked, the way it all unfolded. So first, Kam, perhaps you could. I don't, believe me, I don't want to drag you all over the details again, and it must be very difficult and hard. But if you could just give us a brief overview of what happened, that would be great, just for people that aren't aware of your case.
Yeah, well, Neil was a key worker, and at that time he thought, as most people did, the only way we were going to get back to some sort of normality was to have the injections. And I'll be honest, I had my doubts, but he went for his, and then he started saying, I feel like I've got flu or cold coming on. And then this lasted for about 2 weeks, and then eventually after 2 weeks he collapsed, and he's saying he was having headaches, and he was clutching his heart. He said, I think I'm having a heart attack. So he said, call 999. And then he said, better still, the roads are empty, just drop me off at A&E, because it was bearable. And he went to A&E, 7 hours. I hadn't heard anything because I couldn't go with him at the time. So he was alone in hospital. And then, by this time, 7 hours, I was really beginning to worry. And then eventually he rang me and he said, oh, Kam, they said I've had a heart attack. But he said, they told me that your heart is healthy apart from this one blood clot. And he said they've released the blood clot, and instantly I felt better. And so they took him to the ward, and they said they were going to keep him in for 2 or 3 days. But whilst he was there, he told me he was having headaches. And I don't know why. He had a word with one of the consultants, but they seemed to just ignore it. And when my family, everybody was ringing, they were asking about Neil, and they were saying, sure, it's not anything to do with the vaccine. And I just thought, when Neil went for his vaccination, he said, he was listening to the radio, and he said, oh, have you heard about the blood clots? And then he says, oh, but they say it's such a minute chance of getting one. And then, so he went for it. But I can't believe the doctors did associate his blood clot with the vaccine at the time. And afterwards they told us, because we had a meeting with the hospital, complaints meeting, and they said, oh, we weren't aware of blood clots at that stage. And this was April the 7th. And I know because that day when Neil went March the 23rd for his vaccination, it was on the radio. So how, like the everyday people associated it, thinking Neil's had a heart attack because of the vaccination, but the doctors didn't pick that up. And like Neil, he played squash, he played football, he was extremely fit, and he did not like taking medication, so he really looked after himself. So for everyone it was really shocking that at the age of 50 he should have a heart attack. But then they sent him home. They sent him home even though he was complaining of headaches and he could barely walk. The hospital he was in, it's just a small hospital, so the walk to the front door is not, that great. And he said I had to stop and keep sitting down. And when he got home, his leg was blue. And then he was at home for a few days, and then that was a weekend, Saturday. Then Tuesday he collapsed again. When the paramedics came, they said, I don't know why they sent you home, when they looked at his leg. And then when he went back into hospital, they took him in, and the doctor said, I think you've got sciatica. And Neil said, can you get me someone who knows what they're doing? And there was a haematologist on that day, and he quickly said to Neil, when did you have your vaccination? And Neil told him, and he said, I think you've got blood clots. So they x-rayed him, checked him, and he had numerous in his lungs, everywhere. And then they decided to operate to remove the remaining blood clots, but because he'd had so many blood thinners, they thought it'd be too dangerous to operate. So they didn't know what to do with him. And then after nearly a week being in hospital, his state was, he was just getting so weak. He looked like he was at death's door then. And then they decided that they could do a plasma exchange, and they do it for like 5 nights or something. And again, it was like, I couldn't go into hospital, I couldn't be with him. They decided to do the plasma exchange. And again, I'd go to hospital every day, and I'd just talk to the nurses outside the ward. But the hospital, they never rang me, they never gave me any information, even though they knew his situation was critical. And I did take this up with the hospital. I said, why did you not give me any feedback? Why did you not tell me that this could happen? They said, because the hospital was so busy. But Neil was in ICU with one-on-one care. So he had one nurse looking after him all the time. So I don't know why one phone call when someone is that seriously ill that they might not recover is not too much to ask for. And then, the only time they ever did ring me was when they told me that they were going to do the plasma exchange. And after that, no phone calls, nothing to say how it all gone. And then he was still in hospital for another week. And I said, I need to see him. I haven't seen him for ages. And they said, okay, you can come in, we've got a side room. So I went to see him, and I was shocked. His whole body was covered in bruises. He had cuts all over his neck. He really looked like he'd been through worst possible, illness. He just looked so. I was literally shocked. And then.
So why would he? Sorry, why would he have cuts? Were they were they just abrasions that were being created by the clots?
I think it's where they did the plasma exchange. He had cuts all. I don't know how they do it. You see, so all I assumed was that they
coming
did
by the artery.
So and he did not. He'd lost nearly 2 stones in weight, and then. They said he can go home the following day. And so when I went to collect him, firstly he'd been waiting all day to be released, but they took so long getting his medication together, and he was getting in a state. He was saying, I just need to come home, I want to come home, Kam. They're not doing my medication quick enough. It's because the clots that had gone to his brain, he was suffering from confusion, and then he couldn't talk properly. And he couldn't remember a lot of things. The worst thing was one night he rang me and he said, Kam, I can't remember the children's birthdays. And that just broke my heart. And I just woke up in a sweat thinking, if he gets through this, what kind of man is coming home to me? Will I be his carer now? You think all sorts of things. You just don't know what your situation's going to be. And then he came home. That was a Monday, and he was so depressed. He virtually spent that time sleeping, and then we had to go to hospital on the Thursday because I wanted to see him twice every week because I knew how critically ill he was. And he was just sitting in the chair, and he had tears in his eyes. He goes, Kam, I'm sick of this. I really am sick of people taking blood from me. He said it was like he was on a tap. They were taking blood every hour whilst he was in hospital. And I says, don't worry, Neil, as long as it gets you well, I'm here, we'll work through it. And he was just so down. I'd never seen him like this. And then by Friday, he started what to me seemed like a little bit better. And then on the Saturday morning, it was the 1st of May, and I thought, new month, it's Neil's birthday in a week. Maybe this is when it'll all turn around and he'll start getting a bit more energy, and he's just happy to be home. So hopefully that will go part way to fixing him. And then he was, as I said, he was such an active man. He said on Saturday morning, we're sitting talking with my daughter around the table, having a laugh. And I said to him, go and have your shower, Neil. We'll go and see my mum. Because my mum was absolutely, her and Neil were like best friends. They really were, mother and son. And I said, we'll go and surprise her. She'll be so happy to see that you're feeling better. And then before he went, he goes to me, shall I do the vacuuming? Shall I clean the bathrooms? I says, don't be silly. Just go and have your shower and we'll go out. And next minute, I'm sitting there looking at birthday presents for him. And I hear this big thud. And I just knew it was Neil. So I went running upstairs, and he'd fallen right in front of the bathroom door. I couldn't open. Even to this day, I don't know how I opened that door with him lying there in front of it. And then I'm on, 999, and they're telling me to turn him over. And again, so hard. But I did it. I knew, because I knew I had to do it. But when I looked at him, I just knew it'll be a miracle if he survives. And if he survives, he's not going to be Neil anymore. I just knew it. And then I'm on the phone, and my daughter's at home. Then she starts giving him CPR, and I go outside, and one of the neighbours, he comes to help, and they try. And then the paramedics finally arrived. They tried for 45 minutes, and they said to us he must have had a pre-existing heart condition. And my son said no, he never had any heart conditions. He explained he'd been in hospital, and they said he'd got clots from the vaccine. And so that happened, and then at that point we were just, you can imagine, we were just devastated. My son screaming, saying, they killed him, Mum, they killed him. And my daughter's arms are blue from CPR. And it just hit me that our whole life, our whole world had just crumbled right in front of my eyes. And then a few days later, the coroner's office rang me, and they said, we think he died from ischemic heart disease and rheumatoid arthritis. And I'm saying, no, that's not right. That's not right. I'm, virtually shouting at him. No, he was in hospital for VITS. The vaccine-induced thrombosis, and it's not a heart. He never had any heart issues. And then a few days later, I was so shocked. The doctor, the GP, actually rang, and he says, Kam, what have they put on his death certificate? On his they gave us a temporary death certificate because I can't remember now why they hadn't issued it at that point. But, and he said, you've got to, take it up with them. And he says the nurse at the practice, she's a haematology nurse, she's written to the coroner's office. And when I rang them first, he was virtually laughing at me. He goes, you can try and get it changed, but it can take you years and it can cost you a lot of money. And I'm getting... You can imagine someone who's grieving, and that's the way he's talking to me. And he's saying, you can try if you want, but it won't work. And then a few days later, I got a call from the coroner's office, and they said to me, we're opening an inquest. And that was without too much push from myself. Apart from that call, and it must have been because also I found out later that the hospital had also questioned Neil's death certificate, because they told him he had VITS, he had no heart disease. And plus, When he went in, they said his heart was relatively healthy. And so then it began a year and a half to get his death certificate changed. I had to get all his records, read over them. I mean, when you just lost someone, and I can't tell you how painful it was reading those records. I mean, because I wasn't there were times he was saying, I'm in pain. And I'm thinking, I wasn't there when he was in pain. I couldn't hold his hand, or comfort him. And then because he was getting so confused, there were notes when they said patient, not responding, and I just dread to think what he went through. And you see, it's all those pieces that are missing that cause more pain. Because, as I say, because of those circumstances, we weren't allowed to be at hospital with them. So,
It's
yeah.
I've let you tell the whole story because it's the whole thing is shocking. Alex, you must be thinking that this story because you lived it yourself. We've got a colleague. We've got a colleague ourselves in UKMFA who had a very similar experience to you, Kam. So these aren't isolated incidents, and they're not geographically isolated either. So this is something that is going on all over the place. So you're in Leicestershire, I understand,
Yes.
Kam. Yeah. So Alex, you're up in Glasgow. Our colleague was in Suffolk. So this is all over. And the experiences that people have had from the hospitals, the GPs, the coroners, are so similar. So therefore, you know that there must have been some kind of narrative, instruction, guidance, or whatever coming down from the top, that this is how you will respond when you're asked these questions, because otherwise they wouldn't be answering and dealing with these things in lockstep with each other. They just wouldn't. I find it absolutely shocking. I'm so angry and upset, and I've not had the personal experience that you've had. But just talking to you and hearing your stories is devastating to think that our country could end up like that.
Please consider donating to the UKMFA. We are really grateful for all donations, no matter how small. Your donations enable us to continue to lobby for your right to informed consent and medical freedom to be upheld, and to provide resources to educate and empower the public. There are multiple options for donating. One is that you can scan the QR code that's on this video right now, or you can go to the link that is featured in the description below this video, or you can go onto our website and contribute via donor box, or you can buy us a coffee.
Alex, listening to that story, you probably knew the story anyway, but listening to that story and there must be so much there that resonates with you within your experience, and it's also as well. You were a brilliantly fit man too, and I wonder, is there some correlation, do you think, between being really fit and active?
I'm not sure. Clearly, the fact that I had no underlying health conditions, I was supremely fit. Neil had no underlying health conditions and was supremely fit. Stephen Wright was young, healthy, and fit, no underlying. There's a theme that joins there. I can't tell him about obviously Neil being in hospital alone. I was on the other side of that. I was in a hospital for 2 weeks alone, and for a week of that, I was in isolation. So I was in a room with no window. And I'm not going to tell you any lies. All that happened was a nurse came in every hour. They didn't really talk to you, took your bloods, and went away. You had no visitors. I'd already said goodbye to my wife and 2 daughters via telephone once, and they wanted me to go through an amputation, and it still wasn't clear at that point that I was going to survive. And I said, I'm not doing this. I've said goodbye to my children once via phone. I'm not doing it again. And they managed to get my wife and 2 daughters. I couldn't actually be near them. They were in a doorway. So that resonates with me very much. The, the number of lines in you know, that resonates because it basically your veins start collapsing. So they've nowhere to go. So they end up going up through your neck and things like that. So all that, it's funny how there's so many similarities.
It's interesting as well that the number of blood tests that were going on. And is that also true of you, Alex? Did they keep taking blood?
Yeah, it was every 3 hours at the beginning, every day.
So there it's. Maybe I'm wrong, and forgive me if I am, but that feels like almost a panic situation. So they're checking blood, nothing's changing. What we're going to do? We're stuck. Where do we go now? Who do we talk to? Because we're not getting anywhere, and it's just getting worse. And because every 3 hours or so, it's a lot of blood to be taking, a lot of testing going on.
I was lucky that the hospital I was in, Myers, had the haematology team that was there, who were part of the haematology task force. So there was kind of instant blood checked. The only one obviously we know is the ELISA, the PF4 antibody test. That's an issue because that's got to go. There's only 2 places in the UK that do that test. One's in Birmingham, one's in Aberdeen. So that's got to be all sorted. But I was getting monitored literally by the hour at the beginning. It's funny how there's so many similarities of not knowing what they're doing. Because, I understand it because they'd never seen anything like this. I was lucky.
Well, also they hadn't tested for anything.
No.
But that's what it feels has come out to me, is that when they were testing these drugs, if that's what you want to call it, a drug, I think it's a gene therapy. It's not a drug.
I agree.
But the fact that they didn't know the information because insufficient testing had taken place, so they didn't know what to look for, because if the testing had been done properly, number one, you would hope it would never have been deployed in the first place. But number two, at least they would have known what to look for, and it would have already been there because it's all very well someone.
They did know what to look for because they were warned by other health agencies. I'm sure it was Denmark or Norway that sent the 16, 17 cases that they had that are now, if we look at them, are classic VIP.
You know what happened, Alex, as well, with men? This is what I've read, and I did a lot of research when I was reading Neil's medical notes. They said they thought there was more chances of women getting the blood clot because of the nurses. It was because in their hospitals they'd given it to nurses, and because most of the nurse population are still predominantly females, they were the ones that got the blood clots. So they didn't look so hard in men, thinking it's mainly women who get these blood clots. And plus, as you say, like Europe managed to ban it, they decided not to go with it, but our government did. So I really can't see how they didn't have the information. They had some sort of information, but because of the money and because it was developed here, they went with it. I mean, like one of the professors was quoted as saying it's collateral damage, and that is so insensitive to all these families. I mean, he wants to see what this collateral damage has done to these families.
I suppose what I'm saying is that there's a possibility that, this happens in every large organisation, right? The people at the very top know what's happening, and then a layer or two below, they know some of what's happening. But gradually, as you go down through the hierarchy, those at the bottom, those that are working at the coalface, probably don't. They only know what they're told. And so when say someone's running a test and they find something, well, they haven't seen it before. If the people at the top haven't told them what to look for, and then they start to panic a little bit because they've seen something they've never seen, and now they're saying, well, I need to find someone that knows what this is, and that can happen a lot.
That's exactly what happened in my case.
Yeah, and I think it's funny enough, just as an analogy, it's a little bit like software development. Like people, they develop software, they write some code, and they try and make it work, and it keeps failing, and then they run another test, and it fails, and then it partly succeeds, and they partly deploy it, and they put it out into the organisation, and it all goes wrong, because all the people that see it going wrong, they don't understand why it's not working. And then they get very, very stressed. And that's the problem as well with human beings. Is that in that circumstance, you get then very stressed and uncomfortable. So then you're asking around, does anyone know what this is? Where did this come from? Why does this piece of software not run the way we expect it to? When I press that button, I'm not getting the result I expect. And I think it's just the same in medicine. It's not an exact science, and it never has been.
It's very much so. I think the fact that the vascular surgeon, when she did the CT scan, what she was saying, she knew she had never seen anything like this before. And luckily, as I say, because the haematology was in the building, it was like instant access. When she went to them, I can't say for sure whether any of those people knew prior what was going on. I would like to think they didn't at that point, but they very quickly figured out this is something, and it's not to do with this individual. There's something going on here that's never happened before. She had the foresight, and I suppose the moral compass to actually go and ask that. I don't know what this is. The reality is, we know so many cases where the arrogance of, I'm a qualified professional and I've got experience, I know what this is, and it's the total opposite. That seems to have been the majority. It's just funny how all the stories are so similar.
Sorry, can I ask you, what date did you go into hospital?
I collapsed on the 4th of April.
Yeah, you see, 7th of April, Neil went in. And in the British Medical Journal, it does say 7th of April was the most people admitted for blood clots. 7th of April, and that's the date Neil went in.
That was the first yellow card reports, was the 7th of, based on the 7th of April.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the markers was for this is low blood platelets. And when they did Neil's blood test at that point, it was significant how low his platelets were. And then when he went in the second time, the doctor put in the notes, missed on first admission, the platelets. So when the second time he went in, because I've got his notes and I marked everything, and they missed them the first time. Even though they were shockingly low, they were ignored. I mean, if they'd been picked up at that point, he might have been here today. I mean, I don't know.
Well, we know that anything under 150 is classed as potentially fatal.
It was 74.
Mine was at 43.
74, and it's written. I've got the notes. So when we went for that meeting, we said, how come they were missed? They had no answers for us. They had no answers. They just kept saying we didn't know about it at that point. But then again, I mean, if it was being reported on the news, and there were, now I find out they did know. That's the thing. They did know by April, because March they banned it for the under 19, the AstraZeneca in this country. It was banned, so they knew something was not quite right with it. So I mean, the hospital saying they didn't know is not good enough for me.
Well, so your stories, are very similar. Many others have got the same. Alex, I won't go through your story again now, but I'll refer people and put a link to our previous discussion. So if people want to see your entire story, they'll know. But the long and the short of it is that you had again serious clotting. They couldn't stop the clotting. As you said, you thought it was the end for you as well. And the eventual amputation that you had saved your life, it seems. And but now, I suppose and this question is to you both. But I'll start with you, Alex. Where are you now in terms of your health, your well-being? Because it seems what we are seeing is that people who have taken these jabs are still suffering from them.
Yeah.
And some aren't, but some are, and it seems that this, whatever is going on, is still being created in the body in some fashion. So is that your experience?
Well, yeah. Here we are. I'm not ready for 4 years. I'm still waiting on a brain scan because there is cognitive damage. That's certified by a psychiatrist and 2 psychologists. There's no argument. I understand it myself. I can't remember basic, simple things very early. Retaining information is an issue. I'm waiting on a scan on my right leg because it's presented in my calf muscles. And I have major cramping, narrowing of the arteries issues that cause problems. I've got bowel issues. I've got bladder issues. My eyesight is, clots exploded in my eye and damaged my right eye. I wasn't great at hearing in the best. My right ear is pretty much gone now. You've still got the lingering issues of obviously the amputation. That never goes away. What's in the future? Well, we don't know. But the fact is, if they're not looking at us, and that's my argument now, they're not looking at us anymore, because now that AstraZeneca has been withdrawn globally, there is no appetite or interest in knowing what the mechanisms of it, the implications of it, and our future. I've got to
So
say,
what do you expect? Yeah, what do you expect from this inquiry then? For this module, can you see any hope in it at all, or does it feel hopeless?
my personal thoughts are that this was supposed to be an independent inquiry, and they moved it for a general election. The COVID inquiry official Twitter or X social media pages, were promoting a fictitious drama about the COVID situation, but they didn't mention any of the implications of what these vaccines did. I know it's a very important arena for someone to put the facts there. I was a core participant for both the Scottish and the UK one. I went to the Scottish one. The way I was treated with the press was absolutely horrific. That started my issue. And then when I saw the sort of a political influence on the COVID inquiry, my personal thoughts are they're very important because everything has to be put down in record. But for me, we're spending $500 million in 2 inquiries that all they have is guidance powers. That's not enough for me. And I went down to London for the last one. It costs me money that I don't have. I can't travel. I don't have the money. It's as simple as that. So for me, it's not something I'm prepared to be part of anymore. Because for me, if we want to go through this properly, there has to be legal implications for those that made decisions, knew information and didn't do what they should have done with it. And the fact that we've got government ministers who lie on camera and TV and Parliament, and nothing's been done about that. You mentioned an individual early on. I'm not going to give him credit of using his name. That man is responsible for so much. And how he was allowed, and how they've all been allowed to walk away. For me, no, I'm not going to be part of that anymore, and I've made that very clear. Yeah. I do think it's vitally important that our message, our stories, and our experiences are shared there. But me personally, no, for £500 million, the only people that's making money out of it, getting anything out of that is the legal teams. You're not receiving anything.
Yeah,
we can't even get reimbursed for travelling down there. They said
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, Scottish Wig were going down, and they said we'll pay for 2 people, but 3 people because I need support. And John supported me on that. and
Yeah.
they took someone else, but they only covered the expenses for two. So someone had to lose. And this is the business for me. We're the ones doing all the legwork, all the groundwork, and we're doing this despite the fact that many of us are not fit, and
Yeah.
so many of us are still grieving, and will always grieve because the trauma, the way that they've denied us, they labelled us, they've abused us, they've suppressed us and silenced us. It's disgusting that any government, never mind two governments, would do that. In my case, at least in the UK and England or the UK are having something. There is a department. Scotland is doing nothing and intends to do nothing because they tell you this is a devolved matter. So I'm very angry,
It's
frustrated that
no,
despite
you've got every right to be angry, and we're angry too, and I'm sure everybody that's involved in this, from what I would call the ethical point of view, are completely incensed and angry, and the fact that as you say, the people that need to be held responsible right now are loaded with money, and especially the pharmaceutical companies who have got this sort of pseudo immunity from being prosecuted or legislated against or litigated against. And they've been, in America, they've been given even more by Joe Biden recently. So that only tells me that they've got something to hide, because otherwise they wouldn't need to do that. But trying to force our way through that barrier, is a very, very difficult thing to do. And from what I've said before, I think actual crimes have been committed here. This is not just a medical issue and needs to be sorted out by the General Medical Council or whoever, but there are crimes here, I believe, and have always believed, and as you know, we've tried to submit crime reports in the past, which again we knew were going to be ignored, and they have been ignored. The International Criminal Court is basically ineffective and looks like it's going to get broken up in any event. So where do you go? Where do you go to get your legal sort of restitution? It's very difficult.
Find out more about the UK Medical Freedom Alliance on our website. That's at ukmedfreedom.org. That's ukmedfreedom.org, where you'll find all the information you need around open letters, our campaigns, our legal template letters, and of course, even these podcasts. You'll find details of the latest one, and you'll be able to access the previous ones too via the links there. Find out more about our team. Sign up for our newsletter. It's all there, and you can even donate too.
I think it's very telling that there's only one legal firm that's prepared to actually take on board. It's not just that is unique to Johnson Johnson, AstraZeneca, so that's a different. But let's look at all the other issues. Guillain-Barré syndrome, heart issues.
Yep.
We could go on and on and on.
Yep.
None of these things, no legal team wants to touch them. And the strange thing that I can't understand is we've got so many people that have medical evidence, confirmation that's irrefutable, it is indisputable, undeniable, and yet no legal team.
Yeah.
So therefore you have to go, what's going on in the background? Where is that message coming from? We're very,
Yeah.
to me, they're trying to shut us down, they're trying to silence us, they're trying to narrowise, marginalise what we are. And at the end of the day, we're only ordinary human beings who have suffered the most horrific thing in this planet. And we have been abused by every form of officialdom. Why? Why would you do that to a human being?
But in terms of this shutting down, I think you said about Twitter, didn't you? You said that you felt your account, even on X, was being somehow suppressed. I think we've suffered a similar thing. You see followers disappear and tweets disappear, and shadow banning.
I could put a picture up of a cat and it'll get 100,000 interactions to 200. I put anything with anything to do with the COVID vaccines, my condition or my story, it goes boom. They tell me there's no algorithm, there's free speech, there's freedom of speech. No, it may be freedom of speech, but it's not freedom of speech. If you want freedom of speech, you've got to pay for it. We can't afford it. We're on basic benefits here. And I can assure you, they're not enough to cover what we've lost. You know.
This is disgusting.
To go to the vaccine damage payment scheme, for me, the fact that from 1979, when it was set up, to 2021, I had no more than 6,000 claims, and I'm being very high in my. I think the number's round about 4,000, but I want to just give them a bit of leeway. From 2021 till now, there's been 17,000 people.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're slow walking the claims, they're rejecting so many. People have got causation that you're not disabled enough. And even if you are, I was the first living person to be acknowledged by the vaccine damage payment scheme. And, £120,000, it sounds a lot of money. The reality is, I have lost more in salary in this time than 120. Never mind what the fact that I've lost my leg. And, just the scale of it.
And all the other expenses that go along with that, and trying to support yourself and support your family and do what should be normal things, just leading a normal life. So, Kam, was that your experience as well? Have you tried this payment scheme?
Yes.
Have you had any results?
Even though, like on Neil's, eventually I applied after his death certificate had been changed, so they'd put it down to the vaccine, and it still took me over a year. And every time I'd ring, we're waiting for medical records. So I intervened and I said, look, I got his medical records and I got them within 2 weeks. So do you want me to have a word with that department and say, can you pass on Neil's medical records because because I've applied for the vaccine damage payment? And when I rang the hospital, they said, oh yes, we did receive notification from, the VDPS, can we have Neil's records? But we thought you were suing the hospital. So that's why they didn't send his records on. And that's what they actually told me. And when I said to them, no, I'm not suing the hospital trust, I need it to get this money to help me move forward. I've got children, I only ever work part-time. My husband was a main breadwinner, but I need, some help. So please. And even then, it took me a year every time. Once I nearly broke down. I said, where is the humanity? I said, I'm grieving and I'm having to do all this. He says, why are you not listening? It's just, I know what Alex is saying about Twitter and all these places, but, if you don't say anything, nobody's going to hear anything. So I just keep fighting.
Yeah.
I won't let them put me off. And like you say, Alex, that man, he does not deserve any, I just don't want to say his name. He just like it when after everything had happened and he had resigned, making money in the jungle and like trying to be a people person and selling his book and where we're all struggling. He's still making millions. And it hurts.
You're all still making millions.
Yeah.
This is not about I think Kam will agree with me.
Yeah.
This is not about money for us.
No.
Money's no matter how you could give me 10 billion, it's not going to give me my leg and my life back.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not about
enough.
It's about justice.
Yeah, justice. Absolutely.
That's all that, and the truth to be told.
Yeah.
I think going back to the vaccine damage payment scheme, I go back to the very beginning when nobody told us about this. My daughter found it by accident.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's how I found out.
And at that time, you had to fill it was paper form, so you had to download, fill it all out and send it in. And there was only one number that you could contact.
Yeah.
And that number was an answering machine. And I called that number for 7 months
Yeah.
every week
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
someone to talk to me.
Yeah.
And then they went in the November into December, they transferred it over to the NSBA,
Yeah.
BSA, and employed 80 staff. My experience with that was absolutely horrific.
It was. It was. Yeah.
You would call up, and it's not the advisor's fault. They're reading off what they're limited to. You've got to the stage where I don't take it personally. I don't want to talk to you. I need to speak to a
Yes.
manager.
Yeah.
And then when you did get a call back, well, you to chest, the only reason I got a call back was I took to social media and called
Yeah.
them out and tagged them on it. And eventually they contacted me privately on social media to say, can we help you? And I says to them, you need to call me. They lied on the call.
Yeah. I know.
And then when I asked for
It's just-
an investigation into that, I got a letter from Sir Michael Brodie. Whatever his
Okay.
fucking name is. Basically, I asked for a full timeline review of my case,
Yeah.
which is a full investigation of who did what, when it was done, and where it sat, because it turned out my record sat somewhere for a year,
Yeah.
gathering dust. And I got a 2-line, timeline investigation. And he lied on it. He said they contacted me to update me. They only contacted me to update me because I took to social media. And this is all these small things. And they gave him a title. I know what I would do.
Yeah. Exactly.
I would give him a prison sentence because it's ineptitude and it's corruption.
Yeah.
We could go on and on and on about the legal implications, but for me, it's the simple moral and ethical abuse of what they've done to ordinary human beings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
And it's very difficult to think that people working in those positions would have such low ethical standards. It's amazing how these people get these jobs in the first place.
absolutely, you'd be
I
sacked
don't
anywhere
understand
else if you were that inept. I'm sorry, but I just don't know. Yeah.
And it's not the people. You're right. It's not the people at the bottom because they're as much floundering about as us because they're not being given the right information,
Yeah.
or they've been told something else. And I'm tired of constantly correcting medical professions who should know better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to this day, we've still got people who say they know what they're talking about, trying to dispute what's happened to us. And I said, my answer is, at the end of the day, I didn't say this happened to me. The world's leading hematologist said this happened to me.
Yeah.
Your government acknowledged that this happened to me.
Yeah.
Go and argue with them. I'm getting tired that now we're heading for 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
4 years. And there's so many scandals going on in this country alone.
I know.
We've got, and we can see from the oh God, a bit brain fog, the thalidomide scandal,
Yeah.
which was 60 years ago.
Yeah.
No lessons have been learned. So what's the point in having inquiry after inquiry after inquiry that are costing runs into billions of pounds now, and the only people that make money out of that is the government ministers because they get paid to attend there. The legal professions and the victims are usually left abandoned, thrown to the scrap heap. Well, I'm not going to be going to anybody's scrap heap. I'm not going away.
No.
I'll never go quiet. You can't fix this for me, but you can fix it for so many others. Do the right thing. This is the thing that gets me, And I'm now coming out with no one forced you. Oh yes, you did. Oh yes, you did. You forced everyone in this country into a position where, it's the lies, certification.
Yeah.
And coercion is just the same as someone putting a hand up your back and marching you in there.
Yeah.
If you're coerced by using a psychological implement, then that's just as bad.
And that makes
if not worse.
Yeah.
We've all now got PTSD, and some of them has what's called complex PTSD.
Yeah.
Because if we've had a trauma, that's not going to go away.
No.
And if you don't deal with that trauma and that trauma's denied, that takes it to a whole different level.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder we're losing people to the way the numbers we're losing them.
Yeah.
And and it wasn't just, it was the lockdowns, it was all of it. We lost people to that couldn't take being locked up in, because some people are not comfortable being locked in a house.
Yeah.
Of course.
No, me, I
But
don't
it's
have a
it's
choice
it's, it's
anymore.
anti
Yeah.
it's all anti-human, isn't it? And
Yeah.
none of it made sense. You know,
No.
you can go over it time and time and time again. Never make sense of any of it. But there's an age-old phrase: "We are where we are." That's the
Well, the other thing is
long and
that
the short of it.
you're still dragging on,
Yes.
not acknowledging it.
Mm.
The reality is, I can't get my house adapted to suit my needs. They want to put a lift and destroy my house, through my house, and I'm saying to that to suit your budget, not my needs.
Yeah.
And ultimately,
Right.
I'm sitting going, hold on a minute, this is insane, so therefore this is political. And that's the problem
Yeah.
here. This whole
Yeah.
situation is a political situation, not a medical scientific situation. Decisions were made on
Yeah.
politics and not in
Yeah.
medical science.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is
I
the
just
first time in history we've allowed that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was thinking, I mean, at this age, you start thinking about retiring, slowing down. And I'm thinking, will I have to work forever, because I haven't got that support now, so I'm 60 this year, and I'm not thinking that, I'll be working till whenever. I mean, it's just getting someone to listen. I mean, they bombarded us every day. I mean, not only did they keep us locked up, it was like, every day you put the news on, it was the same old thing, so many dying. So, I mean, that fear is going to get into you. And I was so scared that I just wanted us all to come out of that period with no one harmed. But
You had
it wasn't
the
to
First
be.
Minister in Scotland every day,
Every
live on
day, yeah.
TV, giving an update on the
Yeah.
deaths and the numbers of COVID.
Exaggerated numbers, yeah.
So therefore, no wonder people kept going with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that at the very beginning this was something that they didn't know if this is what it was.
Yeah.
But the reality is now, and Kam will verify this with me, the knowledge that we now have, what we now see, is that they knew exactly what this was, and
Yeah.
it wasn't going to do what it was going. It wasn't going to be that.
And
Yeah.
and the more information that comes out, the worse it gets. Actually,
Yes.
the worse it feels. And there's so many angles to it. It's like an octopus with more than 8 legs. It's like there's so many tentacles to follow, and at the end of it, you find yet another piece of information that says, well, this was never what they said it was. And I'm quite happy to say it and put it on a podcast because people need to know. They need to know that they were had over. Basically, this was a fraud. And
This was anything
it's
new
very
20
interesting.
years ago. This mechanism, the mechanism they were using was causing people clotting issues then.
Right.
So they knew.
But it's interesting that right now there's a flu going round affecting the whole of the nation, and there are nurses saying now that things are worse in the wards now as a result of the standard flu than it ever was with COVID. They said we're run ragged. So it's really interesting that they're saying that now, and yet they were saying something similar back in the COVID days.
Well, we did we did a freedom of information to the Scottish Health to see how many medical professionals died from COVID. Anyone want to guess what that number was? Zero. It was zero.
Yeah. Well, there's a difference between of and with.
Yeah. Yes.
So and that was the telling thing. They would never say of; they would always say with.
Well, yeah.
But you can die with a cold, can't you? Then it doesn't matter. If you so it's just it's not right. It's wrong. And I was actually in Southend Hospital because I've got a blood condition. I regularly have to go into hospital. I won't go into details, but I get things looked at. And I was in a lift with a couple of porters, and I don't think they realised I heard what they were saying. But one said to the other, he said, "How's things in your COVID ward?" And he looked at him and raised his eyebrows and he said, "I've got one in there, I think, maybe two." And he said, "And it's not a ward." It was, but they took lots of beds out so they could separate them, right? So to stop them getting ill, right? So when the ward was full, well, it wasn't full as it used to be when all the beds were in there. It's only full according to the number of beds they've now got, which is probably a third of the number that they had originally.
I mean, I know based on that, they shut all the other wards down.
Yeah.
They stopped all the other treatments. So therefore, no wonder all these medical professionals had lots of time to make up TikTok dances.
Yeah.
That disgusts me now. That disgusts me now.
No. A friend of mine, she's a nurse.
And there's now so much information regarding all of those interventions. They cannot now prove any of them that they were of any value whatsoever. They would have been far better off doing what we used to do when we were kids. You know, if you got the measles, they chucked you in a room with all the other kids, and you all got the measles, got your immunity sorted out, and that was it, done.
I think that now they're crying wolf because they've destroyed people's trust. Now, their own staff, the uptake on COVID vaccines and the flu vaccine now. That, if you look,
it's in
14%.
It's in the toilet.
14%. That's what's it's taking the flu vaccine. It's something like 3% for the COVID one. My issue with that is you're still trying to issue this thing. So you're not wanting to take it, but you want to put it into someone else. You have to have a look at yourself. You've got moral obligations now. I wonder why people are saying there's a massive distrust in vaccines now, traditional vaccines and everything. And people say to me, "You're the cause of that." And I say, no. The fact that people now know that if you end up like me, you're on basic state benefits and you're referred to a system that's outdated, not fit for purpose, because it's too little to too few. That's the reality.
It's never going to be enough, but I mean, it's just the lack of humanity in it all. I mean, things go wrong. We acknowledge that. Like we said, none of us are anti-vaxxers. We're struggling because we went for the vaccine. And, but look after us. I mean, that's all we're saying. I mean, what's happened, nobody can change. I mean, but there's lessons to be learned. I mean, never would I ever take another vaccine that's been developed that quickly with such little testing. But, just be human about it now. I mean,
I'm not sure anybody would have taken it. I'm really not sure that anyone would have taken it if they arrived at the centre and they were sat down and then a nurse said to them, "Right, what we are proposing to do is inject you with a gene therapy. This is not a vaccine. I need you to understand this is not a traditional vaccine. This is something very new. It hasn't been out very long. It hasn't really completed its testing, and nor has it actually been approved. It's only been approved for emergency use because we have this thing going around at the moment called COVID-19. That's proper informed consent. I'm also going to tell you what's in this vaccine, and I can show you the ingredients. I don't think anybody, as far as I understand, I've never come across anyone yet that was given that kind of information at the beginning. I reckon that most people would have walked out and said, "No, thank you."
I was given it verbally. I wasn't even given a leaflet. I was told, "You mean that a sore sight area and flu-like symptoms for 48 hours. That was the sum total of the informed consent that people got at the time.
Some people weren't even given the 15 minutes. I mean, some people, because they were supposed to let you sit there for 15 minutes and apparently that, just to make sure there was no reaction. But most people weren't given that either.
I didn't know.
They're just sent out into the car park, drive yourself home.
Yeah, no, that's what Neil did.
That was the same.
What happens if someone has a reaction when in the middle of their driving home? Not only do they suffer injury, but they crash into other people and cause them injury. No thought, just crazy.
Yeah.
I think we can now clearly show that incompetence, ineptitude, arrogance, and I don't know, corruption comes to mind.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the main things that
Yeah.
were all going on at that time. The people, as you said earlier, the people at the top knew clearly what they were doing because they changed the rules to suit them. The fact that at the very beginning, if I had saw Chris Whitty saying that this is not going to be, given to all adults, it's only for the vulnerable. That was obviously, yes, he said it was recorded, but it wasn't put on TV. So I saw that, I wouldn't have heard the bloody thing.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't need it. Why would you?
You know, and it's like saying that, we put a warning out. Who did you put the warning out to? And who's responsible for putting that message across? Because no one seems to have got that message.
No.
You know,
Yeah, it's like recently as well. They've all denied saying that they said it was safe and effective, and yet there's videos everywhere
Say
saying
safe
that.
and effective.
But they still deny
Yeah.
it, even though it's put under their chin and saying, "There it is. This is what you said."
AstraZeneca's own literature said this is 100% safe and effective from death. I posted it last night. You can't hide what's there.
No.
We're not looking at something as an ambiguity here. They said one thing when the reality and truth is another thing. And the fact that we can't get anyone to legally help so many thousands of other people because the scale of this, we're going through the post office scandal, we're going through the blood scandal. This is this is the biggest thing in human history.
Oh, it's huge.
Because we did this globally to every human being that they could do it to.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do it. I didn't set out to be where we are, neither did Kam. I just wanted to try and get on with my life, but the fact that the way that we've been treated has left me no choice. And I only wanted to try and get help and support for people like me and Kam and the others to stop these things, because clearly there's a problem with not just one of them, all of them.
Yeah.
And to keep them away from children, because I can't tell adults what to do, and I never will. You do your own research and find out for yourself. I'm not here to tell you. I'm here to say this is what happens when it goes wrong. But children, there's no need to keep. Why are we going for the children? If I can achieve nothing else in this life, if that's the one thing I can do, then this will have made some kind of difference in somebody's life. It's not going to fix my life, and it's not going to fix Kam's life.
No.
I've got a couple of things to finish up on. Firstly, it's the spiritual. Kam, I understand you come from Sikh background.
Yes.
Alex, do you have any sort of spiritual beliefs, or do you come from a spiritual background at all?
I was brought up a Roman Catholic. I've walked away from religion when I was about 14, 15. Because I went to an all-boys school. I've taught with nuns in primary school, Jesuit priests in secondary school. It was an all-boys school.
Yeah.
And if nothing deterred me from faith, has this turned into spiritual? Have I become? Yes, I have. I've had to be, because it's the only thing that I've found that has actually done something to help me. If that makes any sense. I'm not.
No, it does, because it's interesting, because I wonder if you almost felt like you'd been saved for a reason, because obviously you're doing amazing work now. And
I do question, I do wonder that, because obviously I know I shouldn't be here. I was getting no hope of survival. My wife and kids were told that. Is that to try and do something? I don't know. All I know is that every minute of every day that I have, I try and make a difference to tell someone or to try and help someone. I heard a story I knew about this story. I will push it out in the next couple of days about a lady who lost her son. And as I say, all you mentioned at the top was that he had a booster. They didn't, young man, eventually, because of the way he was treated, he took his own life. That's what if I can stop that for one person by making them feel you're not alone,
Yeah, bless you.
you know, and it's,
So, because
I'm not the only one, we're all the same. Every one of
no.
us, you know, we're all coming from the same place. We don't want this to happen to another single human being.
No.
What the medical side and the physical side is bad enough. It's all the other things that we've been suppressed, labelled, censored, abused, silenced, you know, made out to be liars.
It's just corruption.
Yeah.
Complete
Yeah.
corruption.
But another reason for my question, I mean, Cam, I don't know if this applies, but it seemed like certainly the churches took a back seat at this time. They didn't come forward and do what I would say would should be protecting their flock, as it were. I don't know. I mean, do you engage in your religion now? And was there anything from the Sikh community that said, you know what, this is probably a bad idea?
To be honest, I'm a bit like Alex. I don't engage, but I do believe, but I've never been one of these that needs to go, to our temples every weekend or anything. But spiritually, it is a religion. I mean, it's about being a warrior, basically. For me, that's what gives me strength. I know the stories of our Sikh soldiers, and they are known as soldiers. So that's why I think I try and, fight for this and fight for others' rights. And, and it breaks my heart all the time. That's what keeps me going. That I think I've got to, all right, you might believe, but now is the time to really show what your faith is about. I mean, the Sikh temples, they protected people in so much as, our kitchens, it's a well-known fact that they're always open to everyone. So they were going out feeding people, but they didn't really get involved in the politics of it. They kind of, I mean, like with a lot of people, they just thought, what can we do to help people? And that's what they did. If there were people alone.
Did they do that during lockdown?
Yeah,
Sorry,
during lockdown.
Did they take?
Yeah.
They did.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's something.
Yes, so they did things like that, but they didn't. I don't think anybody really knew that this vaccine was going to end up causing, so many more problems than actual COVID. So they did whatever they could to address the COVID situation, but the vaccine situation, because they kept it suppressed, and they didn't want, it getting out to people, they weren't so aware of it. But I must admit, from my community and people there, they are very much. A lot of people say we wouldn't take the vaccine, to be honest. They have, I mean, they've seen. I mean, they've seen the stories. They know what's happened, and they do feel cheated. They feel cheated as a community that we were being told these things, and we went for this vaccine that we didn't know. I mean, to be honest, last April I lost my sister to ovarian cancer. She had been 7 years. She'd been well after her initial diagnosis and operation, and now I can't help thinking, did it come back more aggressive because of the vaccine? She'd kept it under control for so long, and you'd never thought she'd had cancer. She recovered that well. And so, like for me, it's just like, I just don't know where to go with it. It's just like I feel I need the justice. I need to fight. That's the only way I stay on an even keel. Otherwise, I don't know where I'd be. I mean, because I have got this fight, and I'll keep fighting like Alex for others. Mainly, I mean, I can't change what's happened to me or Alex or anyone else, but to ensure it doesn't happen again either. And people are aware. I tell everyone my story. I do things. I go out. This is why I'm on this podcast, because I do want to know. And, I don't want to be, sitting back and thinking, I never said anything.
All power to the both of you. You're an inspiration to us all, I think. And I mean, so just to wrap up,
I think just
sorry,
obviously
mate. Yeah.
we're talking about, religion. I go to my own religion, or the religion I was brought up in. The head of our religion went out and told everyone to take these things. Religion should never be involved in
No.
medical. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be. It's just, stay in your lane, for want of a better word. And I think, yeah, do I have a religion? Yeah, I do. I believe.
Yeah.
I believe in me. That's the only
Yeah.
thing I can say, because it's only me that's got me through this in many ways,
Yeah.
and no one else has came to help me.
No, you're right, Alex. Thinking back, I do remember not so much in Leicester, but in other areas, some of the temples, they were vaccine centres. It's because when people
Yeah.
were going, they were advising them, we're doing the vaccine here, it's easier. And, old people thinking, well, they understand, I can speak to them in Punjabi, whatever. Felt more comforted that they could go somewhere more local and get this vaccine. And yeah, so I suppose it was on
That's a
government
bit of a
guidance.
double-edged sword,
They
that one,
went
isn't
for
it?
it.
I think.
Yeah, and they advised people, just as everyone else did, take the vaccine.
I'm not here to decry anyone's religion. I won't do that.
No.
My belief is, if you have a faith and you get solace out of it and it works for you, then that's a faith and it's a true faith for you. For me, I've never had that, and that's not just because this has happened to me. I've been like this since I was a young man. That the only thing that's ever got you anywhere in life is what you do yourself. If
I
people
think I'd
want,
agree, though, that you said that it's like that they shouldn't be getting involved in medical matters. They need to stay separate. If they're going to support their community, great, but that's exactly what they should be doing it from a supportive point of view, but not actively being involved. And I'm sorry, I'll never support them opening vaccine centres within church halls and Sikh temples or mosques or wherever it may have been. No, it's something that we're going to be talking about a lot more at UKMFA, actually, because and our Liz has already done some work in that, sort of challenging her own faith and challenging the Christian church on this. So yeah, I think it's important that these discussions are had as well, because in the future, again, we don't want them taking those kind of stands. It's just not right. Okay, just very quickly then, because we've been an hour and a quarter, we've done very well. So Kam, what do you do? So it's an age-old question about what do you do when you're not fighting? But I mean, you must have some downtime and some. So what makes you smile now? Do you have the
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, Ian. I mean, sometimes when I think about what's happened in the past few years for me, 2019, my dad passed away Christmas Eve. And then 2020, lockdown happened. And then I lost Neil 21. And now I've lost my sister. So there has not been any real kind of downtime for me. Now I'm looking after my mother, who is alone because she's lost her husband. My sister used to live with my mum. So, a lot of time is spent looking after her because she's just devastated. But I do try and get away. I try and take holidays. That's the big thing, just being away from everything, switching off. And apart from that, I am constantly thinking, what way can we fight this? Is there another route? Is there people? I mean, until this is all done, I don't know. I don't think I can rest properly. But
I think that's an important message for people to. It's an important message for people to understand.
Yeah, it is.
It doesn't
absolutely.
go away.
And like Alex said, we will keep fighting. I'm going to go and see Alex. That's going to be my downtime. I'm going to go and visit all these people.
Okay, yeah.
Hopefully, I mean, it's the one thing, like you said at the beginning, we've been brought together by this awful situation. So there is, I mean, I have met some lovely people, and and I'd like to keep those relationships going. And it's only us, we can really understand what went on and how we are feeling now. So that's my downtime, Ian.
Okie dokie. Well, okay. Well, let's see what happens in the next week and what comes out of that. And perhaps we'll talk again after the event and just pull it apart a bit and see what actually took place. Yeah. Right. Anything else you want to say before we close up, or shall I let you go off and have a cup of tea?
I'll always finish on the same thing. People don't know how strong they are, so it's all they've got. And more importantly, remember, you are the only light in your darkness.
Yeah.
Find your way out.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right, Alex.
Yeah.
And you give people hope. You do. You're amazing.
We all do. We all do. It's not just about one of us, it's all of us collectively.
There's a big team effort. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you ever so much. We'll speak again.
Thank you,
All right.
Ian. Thank you for giving us a voice.
Yes, thank you.
No worries at all. Anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, let's just say that while we're still recording, if it ever comes up, you want to get something out there, and you want to use us, no problem at all. Always just do it last minute. Just jump on. No problem. All right.
And
thank you.
You have a room when you come up.
Oh, thank you. And I'll bring the whiskey.
You'll be drinking it. I don't drink now.
Oh.
But that would make a special occasion. How's that?
We can have one.
No, I'll be in the car outside, Kam, if you want to bring one out there.
If Alex will let you. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.